I have been teaching at the Galactic Academy for 31 years. In that time, I have instructed cadets from 214 species. I have written 11 papers on interspecies behavioral dynamics. I have sat on 3 curriculum review boards, chaired 2 ethics committees, and once mediated a cafeteria dispute that nearly became a diplomatic incident involving 7 governments and a disputed recipe for fermented grain paste. I say all of this so you understand I am not easily surprised. The human surprised me. Her name was Cadet Sera Okafor. She arrived on the first day of the new intake cycle, late, slightly out of breath, carrying too many bags, and smiling at everyone she passed in the corridor like they were old friends she had not seen in a while. She sat in the back row of my Introduction to Galactic Civilization lecture hall, which seats 400 cadets from 63 species. And within 11 minutes, every Predator-class species in the room had repositioned themselves to keep her in their peripheral vision. They did not know why they were doing it. That is the part that kept me up at night, not that they noticed her, that they could not explain the noticing. I have been studying that question for 3 semesters now. I believe I finally have an answer. Whether it will satisfy anyone, including myself, I genuinely do not know. This is my official academic record of Cadet Sera Okafor's first year at the Galactic Academy Arcturus. I am filing it under behavioral anomaly documentation because that is the closest category I have. I am aware that behavioral anomaly is perhaps not the most flattering classification for a student who achieved the highest combined score in her intake year. She has not complained. She seems to find the whole thing funny. Most things seem to find the whole thing funny to her. That is, as I have come to understand, entirely the point. Let me describe the room. The Arcturus Academy main lecture hall is built to accommodate significant physical diversity. Ceilings at 6 meters for the larger species. Reinforced seating modules that reconfigure for different body types. Temperature zones across 3 sections. The lighting shifts across 12 spectrums to accommodate vision ranges from infrared to ultraviolet. It is, in other words, a room that has thought carefully about every variable of interspecies coexistence. It had not thought about humans, not because humans are difficult to accommodate, quite the opposite. Humans are one of the most physically average species in the compact. Mid-range height, mid-range temperature preference visual spectrum that overlaps comfortably with standard lighting. They require no special modifications. They fit the baseline configuration as if the baseline was built for them. This is, I have since concluded, slightly uncanny. I was standing at the front of the hall at 800 standard when the intake cadets began filing in. First years. Raw, nervous, performing confidence they did not quite feel yet. I have seen the same display for 3 decades. The young Keth clustering together by instinct, the Varosi taking the highest available seating, the Draven finding the walls, everyone finding their people. Everyone finding safety and familiarity. Standard first-day choreography. Cadet Okafor came in at 807. The door was already closed. She pushed it open without hesitation, not loudly, not dramatically, just opened a closed door because she needed to get through it and walked in. 400 heads turned. She raised a hand in a small wave at no one in particular. "Sorry," she said cheerfully. "Transit timing is a nightmare." She said this to the room, not to me specifically. To the room, like she was making a general observation that anyone might relate to. 2 second-year Jethri cadets in the gallery, who had stayed after a previous session and should have left, actually laughed. The sound surprised them. One covered their mouth. Cadet Okafor found a seat in the back row, shifted 3 times to get comfortable, pulled out a data pad and a physical notebook, a paper notebook, which I had not seen a student bring to a lecture in 8 years, and looked up at me with complete attention. "Ready?" she said. I had lost approximately 30 seconds of lecture time. I started the session. Over the next 11 minutes, I watched the repositioning happen. It was subtle. That is the critical word here, subtle. The Arcturian cadets in the middle sections tilted slightly. The Creche cadet in row 4, Creche enroll rarely and are always watched carefully by faculty, actually turned in her seat twice. A Velhari male 3 rows from the back shifted his entire seating module 40 degrees without appearing to notice he was doing it. All of them ending up with Sera Okafor in their sightline. I noted this on my own data pad. Involuntary orientation response. Species, multiple predator class, trigger, unclear, subject, human female first year. I reviewed the footage 3 times after the lecture. I interviewed 6 of the cadets involved over the following week. Every single one of them said the same thing in different words. I just felt like I should know where she was. The Academy cafeteria operates on a segregated nutrition model for obvious reasons. 47 different dietary requirements. 11 incompatible food chemistries. The drawn section alone requires atmospheric separation. There is also a social geography to the cafeteria that no one designed and everyone follows. Species cluster. First years follow the second years who follow the third years who follow the established invisible lines that have existed for decades. Nobody sits in the creche corner. This is not a rule. It is simply a fact that has never needed to be a rule because no one has ever needed to be told. The creche cadet, whose name was Voreth, sat alone at a corner table and ate in silence, and everyone maintained a radius of approximately 4 meters without discussion. On day 4, Cadet Okafor sat down across from Voreth. I was not present. I received this information from 3 separate sources within the hour, which tells you something about how quickly it spread. Voreth is, by every objective measure, among the most physically imposing beings in that intake year. 2 meters 40. Scaled. Claws that are technically dulled for academy enrollment but remain structurally capable of considerable damage. A resting expression that most species interpret not incorrectly as pre-hunt. Cadet Okafor sat down across from her, unwrapped something she called a sandwich and said, "The drawn section smells amazing, but I physically cannot eat anything in there. What is that, do you know?" Voreth stared at her. "The smell," Okafor clarified, gesturing toward the atmospheric separator. "It comes through the ventilation. Whatever they are cooking, it smells incredible. I have been trying to identify it for 3 days." Voreth continued to stare. "Sorry," Okafor said, "I am Sera first year. I do not actually know anyone here yet, so I am operating on the assumption that most people are fine to talk to until proven otherwise." "Is that a terrible system?" A long pause. "It is a statistically inadvisable system," Voreth said. Her voice, for those who have not heard a creche speak, is a sound that activates something very old and very quiet in the nervous systems of most prey species. "It sounds like patience with teeth." "Probably," Okafor agreed, "but the alternative is eating alone and I find that boring." She took a bite of her sandwich. "So, do you know what the Drawn are cooking or not?" Voreth looked at her for what witnesses described as a very long moment. Then she said, "It is a root preparation. They ferment it for 6 days and then heat it with mineral salts. The chemical process produces a volatile aromatic compound that is physiologically attractive to most carbon-based olfactory systems." Okafor pointed at her. "See, that is interesting. Do you know a lot about food chemistry?" "I know a lot about most things," Voreth said. "Good," Okafor said. "I have questions." 3 weeks later, they were eating lunch together every day. I interviewed Voreth for this record at the end of semester 1. I asked her why she had answered instead of ending the conversation through the more direct methods available to her. She was quiet for a moment. "She was not afraid," Voreth said finally. "Every being I have ever encountered at this academy was afraid of me within the first 3 seconds. She was not afraid in 3 seconds or 30 or 3 weeks. I wanted to understand why." "Have you?" I asked. Another pause. "She says it is because I have not done anything frightening yet. She says she prefers to react to what beings actually do rather than what they might do. She calls it something." Voreth paused. "She calls it optimism. I find it very strange." "Does it bother you?" Voreth considered this with the particular thoroughness of a species that does not give careless answers. "No," she said. "It is the most interesting thing I have encountered at this academy so far. The mandatory first-year combat assessment happens in week 6, every intake cadet, no exceptions. The purpose is baseline documentation. The academy needs to know what it is working with before placing cadets in training tracks. The assessment is not designed to be difficult. It is designed to be revealing. Combat Master Draven runs the assessments personally. She is a Jethri, which means she is fast, precise, and constitutionally incapable of being impressed. She has run first-year assessments for 19 years. She has, in that time, produced a written record of every cadet that surprised her. The record is 4 pages long. Cadet Okafor's assessment added a 5th. The standard format is simple. Cadet enters the assessment chamber. Combat Master Draven attacks. Cadet responds. The response is evaluated not on success. First years are not expected to succeed against Draven, but on instinct decision-making and what Draven calls the quality of the failure. She can tell everything she needs to know about a cadet from how they fail. Cadet Okafor entered the chamber at 1400. She was wearing standard assessment gear. She looked around the chamber with the same expression she wore in my lecture hall. Interested, present, unbothered. Draven moved from the far end of the chamber faster than most first years can track visually. Okafor was not where Draven expected her to be. This is the part I need to be precise about because Draven described it to me twice, and I have watched the assessment footage many times. She did not dodge. Dodging implies anticipation and reaction. What Okafor did was simply shift. A small movement, entirely unhurried, that resulted in Draven's strike passing through the space where she had been standing. "You moved," Draven said, stopping. "You were going to hit me," Okafor said. "That was the exercise." "Right," Okafor looked at her. "Sorry, instinct." Draven reset, moved again, different angle, different speed. Okafor shifted again. The same way, small, economical, almost casual. Draven stopped a second time. There is a thing that Jethri do when something has their complete attention. Their secondary eyelid retracts. It is an involuntary response. Combat Master Draven's secondary eyelid retracted. Again, she said, the assessment ran for 47 minutes. The standard assessment runs 8. Okafor never successfully countered Draven. She also never took a clean hit. Every time Draven struck, Okafor was slightly elsewhere, not dramatically, not impressively, just not there. At the end, Draven stood in the center of the chamber breathing harder than she would have liked and looked at the cadet in front of her who was not breathing hard at all. How are you doing that? Draven asked. Okafor thought about it. I watch where people are going to be, she said, not where they are going. Once you see it, you just have to not be there. That is not a technique I teach, Draven said. No, Okafor agreed. My grandmother taught me. She said it was useful for navigating crowded markets on Earth. A lot of elbows, very efficient people. Combat Master Draven's 5th page of assessment notes is the longest entry in the document. I have read it. The final line reads, this cadet does not fight, she simply declines to lose. Recommend advanced placement all combat tracks immediately. When I told Okafor about the recommendation, she looked mildly surprised. That seems like a lot, she said. I did not win a single round. You did not lose one either, I said. She considered this. My grandmother would say that is the whole point. I need to document this carefully because it involves a formal disciplinary matter, though the outcome of that matter was sufficiently unusual that it deserves its own notation. Cadet Ravek is a Varosi, 3rd year. Varosi are a large, aggressive species with a strict social hierarchy, and Ravek is the product of that hierarchy at its most concentrated. He comes from a military family, holds the highest combat ranking in his year, and has a documented history of testing the boundaries of what the Academy's conduct code will tolerate before requiring intervention. The Academy tolerates more than it should, in my opinion, from cadets with his combat record. This is a separate discussion. Ravek had been making the standard observations about human cadets since Okafor's arrival. Fragile species. Participation award enrollment. That sort of thing. Delivered loudly enough to be heard and quietly enough to be deniable. The particular social technology of someone who has never been meaningfully challenged. On day 31, he made his observations directly to Okafor in the corridor outside the Advanced Tactical Analysis Suite. I have the corridor footage. I have reviewed it many times. Ravek stopped in front of her. He is 2 meters 15. She is 1 meter 72. He had 2 larger cadets with him. He made a comment about human physical parameters and the wisdom of species attending institutions designed for beings capable of surviving the coursework. Okafor listened to the entire comment without expression. Then she said, that is a lot of words. Can I ask you something? Ravek looked at her. Ask. When you imagine how this conversation ends, she said, in any version of it you have considered, does it end well for you? Silence. Because I have been at this academy for 31 days, she continued. And in that time I have attended every class, passed every assessment and made, by my count, 11 friends across 7 species, including Voreth, who I think you know. She paused. You have been at this academy for 3 years. How is your count? More silence. I ask, she said pleasantly, because you seem like a person who values hierarchy, and I am trying to understand where exactly you think you are in relation to me and whether the math is working out the way you think it is. One of Ravek's companions made a sound. I believe it was a suppressed laugh. Ravek heard it too. The corridor footage shows him standing very still for 4 seconds, then he walked away. He did not say anything else. He did not, as far as I can document, target Okafor or any of her associates again. He also began, in the following weeks, arriving to tactical analysis sessions earlier than required and sitting where he had a clear sightline to her study group. When I asked one of his companions about this later, carefully, professionally, the companion said, Ravek wants to know what she is going to do next. We all do. I found this answer both illuminating and somewhat unsettling. In the best possible way. The Academy Arcturus Central Library is one of the largest knowledge repositories in the Northern Compact. 4 million physical texts, 11 billion digital records, staff of 42, hours of operation. 600 to 22, standard. Cadet Okafor's library access log for semester 1 shows 171 visits. The library is open for 24 hours per semester. She was there for approximately 1 in every 14 of them. I pulled this data because it seemed relevant to a pattern I was observing in her assessment scores. She was performing at the top of every cohort, not occasionally, consistently. Tactical analysis, xenobiology, engineering principles, diplomatic theory, combat history, language acquisition. The range did not make sense for a specialist track cadet. The academy trains for depth. She was acquiring breadth at a rate that should have been impossible given the coursework demands. I went to the library on a Tuesday evening at 19:00 to understand what she was actually doing there. She was at a table in the Northeast section, surrounded by texts from 4 different departments, writing in that paper notebook with 3 other cadets sitting across from her. A Hethri named Calyx who was failing engineering. A Drawn named Voss who was struggling with diplomatic theory. A young Velhari named Sen who had nearly failed her first tactical assessment. Okafor was tutoring them, all 3, simultaneously. I stood in the stacks and watched for 20 minutes. The way she taught was unusual. She did not explain things from the text. She translated them, took the official material, and rebuilt it in a framework that connected to something each student already understood. For Calyx, the engineering principles became analogies to Hethri construction techniques he had grown up watching. For Voss, the diplomatic theory became stories, specific historical events with clear emotional stakes. For Sen, the tactical assessment framework became a physical language she connected to how her species moved naturally. Different entry points to the same knowledge, rebuilt for each listener. I watched Calyx go from frustrated and silent to talking faster than I had heard him talk all semester. I watched Voss lean forward and start writing. I watched Sen actually laugh when something that had been opaque for weeks became suddenly obvious. After 20 minutes, I went back to my office and sat there for a while. I had been teaching for 31 years. I held 4 advanced degrees. I had written 11 academic papers and chaired ethics committees and mediated disputes that nearly started minor wars. A first-year cadet, age 22, was doing instinctively what it took me a decade to learn deliberately. Meeting each person where they actually were, not where the curriculum assumed they were, where they actually were. I thought about what Voreth had said. She prefers to react to what beings actually do rather than what they might do. It was not just social, I realized. It was everything, every interaction. She looked at what was actually in front of her and responded to that specifically rather than to a category or a type or an expectation. It sounds simple when I write it down. It is extraordinarily rare. Midterm week. Every first-year cadet undergoes physical endurance assessment. This includes the gravity calibration exercise, a 60-minute session in the variable gravity chamber at 1.5 times the cadet's home world standard. For most species this is challenging. For some it is the hardest physical test in the first year. Earth standard gravity is approximately 1 g. The test runs at 1.5 g. Uncomfortable. Taxing. Doable. Cadet Okafor asked before entering the chamber if she could adjust the setting. The assessment officer, a Tharuk named Krell, said yes and reached for the 1.5 g calibration. Higher, Okafor said. Krell stopped. Higher, can you run it at 3 g? Silence in the assessment staging area. 6 other cadets waiting for their sessions had all turned around. 3 g would be 3 times your home world standard, Krell said, in the tone of someone who is checking whether they have misheard something. Yes, Okafor said, I train at 2.5 g normally. I would like to see where 3 sits. Krell looked at her, looked at his assessment documentation, looked back at her. The standard test is 1.5 g. I know, Okafor said. I am asking for a voluntary adjustment. Is that permitted? It was permitted. It had simply never been requested by a first year before. Krell set the chamber to 3 g. Okafor was in there for 60 minutes. She came out breathing harder than at the combat assessment but standing straight, rolling her shoulders like someone working out a minor stiffness. What does 3.5 feel like? She asked Krell. Krell, who had been watching the session monitors for 60 solid minutes, said, I do not know, no one has asked me that before. Maybe next time, Okafor said and went to get water. The 6 cadets who had been waiting for their sessions were very quiet for the rest of the staging period. One of them, a Keth cadet named Voris who I later interviewed, told me, I was next in line. My home world gravity is 1.4 g. The 1.5 g test was the thing I had been most worried about for 6 weeks. What did you feel? I asked. I do not know exactly, Voris said. She walked out of 3 g looking like she had taken a walk outside. And she asked about 3.5 like it was an interesting question rather than a dangerous one. And I thought if she can do that, then I can do 1.5. A pause. I passed the test, first try. I had expected to need 2 attempts. Do you think it was because of what you saw? Voris thought about it. I think it was because she made the hard thing look like a thing that could be done. And once you believe something can be done, you can sometimes do it. I wrote that down. I have thought about it many times since. I am going to be precise here because precision is my professional obligation, and because what happened in week 14 matters beyond its immediate facts. There is a section of the academy called the Outer Ring. Administrative buildings, storage, maintenance, access. Cadets are not forbidden from the Outer Ring, but there is little reason for them to be there outside of assigned duties. It is not patrolled heavily. 3 third-year cadets, I am not using their names in this record as it is under separate disciplinary review, had developed a practice of using a specific outer ring corridor after hours. The purpose of this use was the intimidation and occasional physical harassment of first-year cadets from smaller species. Nothing that left documented injuries. Everything that left documented fear. The Academy knew this was happening. The Academy had been slow to address it for reasons I find professionally embarrassing to record here. On the night in question, they found Calyx there, the Hethry first year, Okafor's tutoring student. He had been taking a longer route back from the library because he had been lost and had not wanted to ask for directions. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time in the specific way that wrong place, wrong time usually means someone with less power encountered someone with more of it. Okafor was not in the outer ring. She was in the study hall 2 corridors away. I need to document how she knew. I interviewed her specifically about this. She said Calyx always messaged her when he was leaving the library. That was their habit. She had been waiting for the message. When it did not come at the expected time, she tracked his last known location through the Academy's shared positioning system. All cadets have access to each other's position with mutual consent, and saw that his marker had stopped moving in the outer ring. You checked his position? I said. He was late, she said. He is never late. You monitored his movements, she looked at me. He gave me access to his position, I gave him access to mine, we all did Calyx, Voss, Sen, Voreth. If someone stops moving somewhere they should not be stopped, we go find out why. A pause. Does that seem unusual? I thought about how to answer that honestly. For most species, yes, I said. Humans look after their people, she said. It is not complicated. She had reached the outer ring corridor in under 4 minutes. What happened next is on the corridor footage and is also under separate disciplinary review, so I will document only the outcome. Calyx was uninjured. The 3 third-year cadets were present when security arrived, which they were not expecting to be. Okafor had messaged security at the same moment she left the study hall, 4 minutes. She had messaged security the moment she saw his position marker had stopped. When the duty officer asked her afterward why she had not waited to confirm there was an actual problem before alerting security, she said, "Because if I was wrong, it cost nothing to send the message. And if I was right, 30 seconds might matter." The duty officer wrote that down. I know because she told me later. She said it was the most logical threat response reasoning she had heard from a first-year cadet in 15 years of security work. Calyx found me the next morning. He stood outside my office and was quiet for a moment before saying what he had come to say. "I want to change my specialty track," he said. "I enrolled in engineering because my family expected it. I want to change to diplomatic and intelligence services." "What changed your mind?" I asked. He was quiet again. Then, "Someone looked for me when I was lost. I would like to be the kind of person who does that." I approved the track change. I did not record the reason in the official file because I did not know how to classify it. I still do not. But I believe it was the most important decision that young cadet made in his first year. The combined end-of-semester assessment at Arcturus is the closest thing the Academy has to a crucible. 5 days of evaluations across every discipline simultaneously. Sleep deprivation is not built in, but it is an inevitable byproduct. Stress levels reach what our counseling staff classify as significant. Cadets crack, some withdraw, some request deferrals. Every year without exception, some number of first years do not complete the week. Cadet Okafor completed the week. This is not remarkable by itself. Plenty of cadets complete the week. What I observed was something different. Each evening of assessment week at 2,000 hours, Cadet Okafor was in the common area of the first-year residential block. She was not studying, she was present, talking to anyone who sat near her, listening to anyone who needed to talk. She brought food from the cafeteria, her own rations plus whatever she could collect from cadets who were not eating. She was not running a support session. She was not performing wellness. She was simply there, in the same way she had been simply there in my lecture hall on day 1. Available, present, paying attention. On night 3 of assessment week, a Keth cadet named Mora had a full stress response in the common area. Not a small one. Keth stress responses are visible and loud and frightening to observe if you do not know what you are looking at. Everyone else in the room moved back. Okafor moved forward. She sat down on the floor next to Mora. She did not touch her. She had apparently learned at some point that Keth do not want contact during acute distress. She just sat there, present, close, not saying much. "It passes," she said at one point. "It always passes. You have done everything right this week. Your body is just running a bill for it right now. Let it." Later I asked how she knew not to touch a Keth in acute distress. "I read about it," she said, "in the xenobiology files." First week, she paused. "I thought it seemed important to know." I assigned that reading. It was optional. She had read it in the first week because it seemed important to know. I sat with that for a long time. Mora passed her assessments. She told me when I interviewed her for this record that she had not been going to try the next morning when she woke up after the stress response, that she had decided the night before that she was done. What changed? I asked. She stayed, Mora said. She did not try to fix it. She did not tell me it was fine. She just stayed until it was over, and then she said that I had done everything right, and she said it like it was a fact rather than an encouragement. A pause. I decided if she believed it was true, it was probably true. The results of the first-year combined assessment were released on the final morning of examination week. Cadet Sera Okafor placed first in her intake class of 412 cadets across 63 species. She placed first in tactical analysis, first in diplomatic theory, joint first in xenobiology, second in engineering, third in advanced combat theory, which is remarkable for someone whose combat assessment was filed under declines to lose rather than any recognized offensive discipline. When the results were posted, she was in the common area eating breakfast with Voreth, Calyx, Voss, and Sen. Someone brought her a data pad showing the rankings. She looked at it for a moment, said something to the group. They all laughed. Voreth's laugh is an unusual sound. I do not think she had used it very much before this semester. I had one more interview with Cadet Okafor at the end of the year. I told her I had been compiling this behavioral record and that I would be filing it formally. She seemed amused. Behavioral anomaly, she said. That is the category. It is the closest available category, I said. What is the anomaly specifically? I thought about how to answer that. I had been thinking about it for months. You are not what we expected, I said finally. She considered this. What did you expect? Something more difficult, I said. Or something less. We had assessments, data profiles, projections based on your species' known parameters. The projections were not inaccurate, they were simply incomplete. What were they missing? I looked at her for what witnesses described as a very long moment. They were measuring what humans can do, I said. They were not measuring what humans decide to do, what they choose, who they choose to be, what they choose to pay attention to. A pause. Those are different variables. We did not have them in the model. She was quiet for a moment, then that seems like an important gap. It is, I said. I have recommended a curriculum review, she smiled. Not the big open arrival smile from day one, though that one appeared regularly throughout the year. The other one, quieter. Professor, she said, can I ask you something? Ask. When you watched Voreth track me in the first lecture, when you started writing on your data pad, what did you actually write? I remembered exactly. I could have recited my note word for word. I chose to paraphrase. I wrote, I said, that I was not sure what I was looking at. But that it seemed important, she nodded. That is honest. I try to be. It was important, she said, in case you were wondering how it turned out. She picked up her bag. She was heading home for the intercession break. Earth, presumably. Whatever part of Earth she came from, whatever made her the specific version of human that she was, that particular combination of curiosity and steadiness, and the absolute refusal to let fear do her thinking for her. She waved at me from the doorway, same wave as day one, small, easy, directed at no one in particular and somehow specifically at me. I waved back. I do not normally wave. I have been teaching for 31 years. I have not had a first-year class that changed as measurably as this one did over a single semester. The progression metrics are extraordinary. I have submitted them to the research office. But the metrics are not, I think, the real story. The real story is Voreth laughing in the common area, Calyx changing his track, Mora sitting her exams, Voreth passing a test he had expected to fail. The real story is what happens when one person walks into a room full of strangers and decides, without apparent calculation or effort, to be genuinely interested in every single one of them. It does not sound like a power. I am here to tell you it is the most significant power I have observed in 31 years of watching beings from 214 species move through this institution. The predators tracked her because something in their ancient nervous systems recognized what she was. Not prey, not threat, something rarer than both, something worth watching. They were right. End of record. Professor Zeth, Department of Xenobiology and Species Studies, Galactic Academy, Arcturus. Cycle 331, Semester 1. And if you believe that curiosity is the most dangerous thing a being can carry into a room, subscribe to Ironheart HFY. We are just getting started.